You're listening to the Cereal for Dinner podcast. This is episode 2. And on today's episode, we are talking about Star Wars, the original series. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cereal for Dinner podcast. This is episode 2. I'm your host, Ian C. As you can see on my shirt, we are going to be talking with the Death Star. Pretty cool shirt, huh? Well, today we are going to be talking about Star Wars. And before I do that, I wanted to let you guys know that we have a couple things coming up that will be ways that you can support this channel or however you're watching, if you're listening to it on podcast or you're watching it on YouTube. There's going to be I'm going to be setting up a couple ways so you can support the channel. I'm going to be linking both Patreon accounts and buy me a cup of coffee account, which is kind of like Patreon account below. And also, if I mention something on here, I will leave a link to where you can buy that product. So like today I'm going to be talking about Star Wars, so I will leave a link to where you can purchase the DVD set of Star Wars, but you probably just digitally download it anyway. But if you don't and you actually want to get your hands on it, click the link below and you will be able to buy that for yourself off Amazon. I am an affiliate, and that's one way that it helps me with the show. So this was one of the first ones I ever wanted to do was Star Wars, and the reason why I wanted to do it was because it had such a big impact on me personally, and I think it had a big impact socially, and I think it had a big impact on media as well, the movie genre, the film genre. Again, let me just remind you that this will probably not be the first time I talk about this issue, and this is not going to be the only issue I talk about. I'm not just going to talk about Star Wars or, like the last time I talked about hair metal. I'm like, look, this might come up again. Okay, these are the kind of things that I talk about, and if I get a guest on the show to talk about Star Wars, this will definitely be the kind of thing that I talk about again. As a matter of fact, if you can see in the background there on my messy nightstand, there are 2 hilts sticking out of the if you're only listening to this, you can't see it, but there are 2 hilts sticking out of behind the pillow there, and those are lightsabers, a blue one and a green one. And that'll tell you a little bit about who I am. I love Star Wars, but I love talking about Generation X, and I love talking about nostalgia and growing up. So first of all, there's really no place to begin that's wrong. I was 4 years old when Star Wars first came out, and I think one of the things that I wanted to talk about before I get it to how it affected me personally, and I am only going to be talking about the original series, by the way, so sorry, I should have said that up front. It's just going to be the original series that I talk about. But before I talk about how it affected me personally and how I grade the movies and what I liked about them for the most part and what I didn't like about them to some degree, I just want to talk a little bit about how Star Wars kind of changed the industry. Of course, I can't bring up every way that Star Wars changed the industry, but if you're looking at movies prior to Star Wars, a lot of the movies were very gritty movies where there was no defined black and white, where the hero and the antagonist of the show, the protagonist and the antagonist of the show were almost identical, with the exception of, maybe one had a badge or something like that. You had your Dirty Harry movies, you had your Death Wish movies, where the hero was doing something kind of very underhanded kind of a thing, and Star Wars came along and really did something unique in that it brought things back to kind of black and white. It brought things back to good was really good and bad was really bad, and that good won because it was good and overcame bad in spite of bad being more powerful or more, had more military, had more, whatever earthly kind of power that you can think of. Good won out over against bad, and that was not a common theme. Actually, that, and then if I can just go off script for a second, saying Rocky kind of did that a little bit too, where the person kind of dug in his heels and did the work and reaped the rewards, where, it wasn't like they shoot horses, don't they, kind of films. So I really respected Star Wars in that, and I really liked Star Wars in that, and that influenced me quite a bit as a kid because, of course, as I said, I was 4 years old when that came out. And this idea between good and bad being very clearly defined, really had an effect on me as I was growing up and seeing the world. I didn't see, and I still to this day, of course, your views change as you get older, but I really kind of do splice the world up between black and white, between right and wrong. I know that there are maybe times where, something bad has to happen for something good to happen. Of course, I'm not naive in that respect, but it really affected me. I do really see the world kind of like good or bad. There's good and there's bad. There are people working for good forces, and there are people who are working for bad forces. There are, so I see the world in that way, and affected me. So 4 years old, watched it in the theater. The movie blew me away when the original Star Wars A New Hope. I'm in the theater, the lights go dark. I really don't know if there's a movie I saw before this. My earliest memories really kind of go back to around that time anyway. So my earliest memory is my third birthday. I don't really remember anything before that, but I remember my third birthday, and I remember getting Weeble Wobbles, Mickey Mouse Weeble Wobbles for my third birthday. That's all I remember. It was a party or something, so I'm developing memories right around this time. So Star Wars, I really don't even remember if I went to a movie before Star Wars, but you had the ship coming overhead. Well, it actually felt, still to this day, it's like when I see that show and you see the ship coming over, then the Imperial destroyer coming over, it really feels like it's coming in from behind you. It's almost like I can't describe that without describing that ship coming in kind of behind me. It's almost like it comes in over your head after the screen crawl and stuff. And so we're introduced to some characters, as I'm not going to obviously go through the whole movie, but we're introduced to probably the most iconic bad guy who's ever existed, Darth Vader. And really, between the shows, you can see the archetype of the characters change over the shows. You can see the archetype of Luke change. You can see the archetype of Princess Leia, who changes, and then Han Solo, who changes, and Luke Skywalker, of course, being the star of the show, change. The focus of the show. And then supporting cast would be like the droids and Chewbacca, unfortunately. And not unfortunately Chewbacca. I like Chewbacca, but he didn't really get an arc. He didn't really get a story arc. His character was largely underdeveloped, and I think that probably upset some people. And then sometime later, some Yahoo wrote a book and killed him off. Of course they killed him off. They didn't. It's not like they killed, Han Solo or somebody else off. They killed him. Well, now they killed Han Solo off, but in the books they killed Chewbacca off. And by the way, just so you know, on a side rant, when they were writing these books, these kind of fan fiction books, one of the rules George Lucas had was you can't kill off any of the main characters. And one guy said, "Well, I'll show you. I'll kill off Chewbacca," and so he killed Chewbacca off. But you get this character arc of these individuals, and first we're introduced to this very malevolent character who turns out that he was Luke Skywalker's father, as we find out in the second one, and then Luke redeems him in they work together for their redemption, for his redemption in the third one. I absolutely loved the first one. The first one was my second favorite one. Okay, my favorite one was Empire, which we'll get to in a minute. But let me just run through a couple of things that I liked about it. I liked that the idea of the sand planet of Tatooine, and the idea of this farm boy who really doesn't have anything going on for him in the foreseeable future except a dream. He has this dream to get off this rock, but honestly, it looks like a dream that's never going to come to fruition, because he's on this, and it's something that a lot of people can identify with. It's just like it's almost like if you grow up in a bad neighborhood. As a kid, you dream about leaving that bad neighborhood, but you probably won't ever leave that bad neighborhood. It's unlikely. You have to really, really fight. People get out of those situations, but they really, really have to fight in order to get out of it. And he wants to go into this academy, but his Uncle Owen wants him to stay and work the farm a little more. And this is kind of like life is. It's kind of like, well, I'm going to be a rock star, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to get out of this. But, you have these idealized thoughts when you're a kid. But you get older, and, you get your first job, and you get a car, but you realize you got to pay for the gas. And so you take a job for minimum wage at a gas station or a McDonald's or something like that. And then you get a girlfriend, and then you guys get married, and you realize you can't leave, or it's a little bit easier said than done, and that's the general way life goes. And so when you see somebody who you look at like Luke Skywalker, like this character who gets his opportunity, although through tragedy, to get out of this situation, I think that's one of the reasons why it hits home with so many people, and why so many people love the story, is because here you had this kid who's a little bit of I'm going to keep it clean, but I don't know, a whiny kid. He's whiny. Life really going nowhere. Has some dreams. Those dreams are more than likely not going to come to fruition, and he's right at that point where he realizes that in the story, he's right at that point where, and we all have this point where we realize to some degree that maybe those dreams aren't going to come true. That, maybe I grew up farming, and maybe farming is going to be part of my life for the rest of my life. And he's really at that critical point where he realizes that that's probably what his life is going to be. And then the tragedy hits, where the intervention with the droids and R2-D2 wanting to get to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and them going off. Then Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru get killed, and then they go on the space journey where they kind of meet up together with the crew of the Millennium Falcon, and then they take off, and here you are introduced to this other character who's in debt, who has a gangster of a boss, and once again it's another character that's found himself in a bad situation, and more than likely he's older than Luke. Obviously not as old as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he's older than Luke. He's set in his ways. He's got a piece job where he's got to find work, and he finds this work, but he's in a bad situation. He's probably not going to get out of it. He's a scoundrel, and he's probably always going to be a scoundrel, basically. But his archetype changes as well. And then they go on, and then they go to the Death Star, where they rescue Princess Leia. And we've been introduced to her character, and her character is that of the idealist, a little bit snotty, but knows what it means to get her hands dirty. knows what it means to be born both with a silver spoon in her mouth, but also born with in the midst of conflict, and not idealized conflict either. She's somebody who knows what it means to have to smuggle the good, and you know what I mean. She's that character, but she's a little snotty. She doesn't identify well with other people. She's, this is the way it's done. And of course, when she kind of looks down on Han Solo. You're the kind of person who's always going to be a scoundrel. You're not going to care about anybody but yourself. You're not going to care about any larger causes. And you're certainly not going to care about any larger causes in a way that that will really make a difference. So she's that character. She's a character who is born of royalty, or adopted into royalty, as we find out later. But she's one of those characters that knows what it means not to live in an ideal world, even though she's rich, and willing to part with her ideal world in many real ways in order to make a difference, in order to fight for what's right. Okay, so Obi-Wan Kenobi sacrifices himself in a lightsaber fight, which was the boringest lightsaber fight in the world. But there, if you don't know, there is a lightsaber fight that a fan did between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. That was actually really good. That was really super good. And I didn't feel like it betrayed the series at all. I didn't feel like it was too flashy or anything like that. I felt like it was actually a really, really super good fan-made film that enhanced the lightsaber fight between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader. But let me say this one thing. My favorite Jedi of all time was Obi-Wan Kenobi, or is Obi-Wan Kenobi. I had quite an imagination. Even actually, like the very beginning, my favorite character was obviously Luke Skywalker. I was a kid. I identified with him. I'm like, who's the hero? That's who I want to be. But even as like a teenager, what happened was I had this, my imagination. I would go out and I'd have sticks because I didn't grow up rich. I did have toys and stuff, but that's another story altogether. I would just get a stick and pretend it's a lightsaber, basically. I had some toys, but the toys always broke, especially the lightsaber. There was one lightsaber that they did where you pumped air into it, and it would always it would always pop. So I wasn't happy about that. So my favorite character was Obi-Wan Kenobi. It still is Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I was unhappy that they killed him off in the first episode. And here's just my own little bit of fan fiction. I wish that they would have kept him around until the Hoth scene and still have him die protecting, get off some way, fight Vader and get off the Death Star. And this is just my own imagination going. And part of me liking him was I used to imagine before the prequels came out, when I was a kid playing lightsabers in the backyard, I used to imagine, man, what kind of battles must have he been in if he survived the Clone Wars and he's one of the only Jedis left. So I was just like, he's got to be awesome. So I always idealized Obi-Wan Kenobi in my mind. So in my imagination, if I could go back and rewrite the story, I would not have him die at the Death Star. I wouldn't have him die there. I'd have him get off, and then I would have him fight Vader on Hoth as the Imperials are coming in, and the rebels are having to escape. I would have had him fought Vader then, and then given himself up at that point to have the rebels be able to flee. That didn't happen, obviously, that way. That didn't happen that way. So Obi-Wan Kenobi ends up dying in this to give his life for so that they could get off the Death Star. And then they get off the Death Star, of course, and then they have the big battle where they find the weakness in the Death Star, and they are able to defeat. And of course, Luke harnesses into the Force here in a real clear way. Of course, he harnessed into the Force back when he was training on the Millennium Falcon, but he harnessed into the Force in a more direct way when he blew up the Death Star, and couldn't have done it without Han Solo. Han Solo comes back, and the show ends, as you know. And that show, for me, gets an A. There was really only thing as an adult that I kind of don't like about it, and that's the Jawas. But I don't hate them either. Okay, so I don't hate them like I hate the Ewoks. So I hate the Ewoks, just so you know. We're getting there. I hate them. But I didn't hate the Jawas, but I didn't love them either. There's a little bit of curiosity as what was underneath there, what was underneath the sand people, that kind of thing. Well, then we get to, but the other thing I didn't like when I was a kid was there wasn't enough lightsaber action. So I really wanted to see more lightsaber action, even as a child. I wanted to see more lightsaber action. So this is why the second one probably gets an A+. I would probably go A to A+ for Empire. Empire being the darkest of the stories, of course, and the real critical moment. And of course, even from 4 years old, one of the biggest things that affected me, other than the duality of good and evil, was also my love for the martial arts. I am a lifelong martial artist, and I can really trace that back to two sources. And the first source was Star Wars, was just wanting to emulate the Jedi. But the second thing was, and this is off topic here, was the television show Kung Fu. That really affected me as well. So those two things really affected me in pushing me towards my martial arts. And I would actually say that out of the two, probably Star Wars was the bigger influence, and the television show Kung Fu was probably the more specific influence. But it affected me. But I didn't like it as much because there just wasn't as much Jedi stuff, and that's really what I wanted to see. I love the story, but I wanted to see more Jedi stuff. That's part of what drew me to it. So then we get to the second story, and it's a much darker story, where you have them being together for the first little while on the ice planet of Hoth, and Luke being told to go train with Yoda, and a cool lightsaber scene there, and a cool battle scene on Hoth. But from that point on, they really kind of go their separate ways, and they face their own journeys. They face their own archetype, their own character type, sewing up ends that are left in the first one, with Luke's being the more pronounced, I would say. But of course, Han and Leia's being significant as well. But let me just say, Han and Leia's was more of the romance coming together of those two, of that story, those two kind of becoming more romantically involved, which is going to be good for this kind of love triangle that they got going on. Luke's was more internal. Luke's was more about a struggle within himself. He goes to Dagobah, and the one thing that they hit on there that I really loved was that inward struggle, where he realizes that him and Darth Vader are in seed form identical. He goes, I don't know if that's the exact lesson he gets from the cave, but basically, it's like everything Vader is, he's thinking I could be that. That's what happened with that conflict in the cave. Of course, he's a bad student. He doesn't listen to his master. It's impossible. He's at the very beginning, I'll do whatever it takes, and then, oh, you're impossible, and and focus and concentrate, and don't take your weapons. You only take them. You don't even need them, and he takes them anyway, and he doesn't trust his teacher, and he goes in there, and he realizes that this is an internal conflict, that the real fight is yes, between him and Darth Vader in an external sense, but the real fight is he going to give himself over to the darkest part of himself, and that essentially there is no difference between him and Vader, that he could become just as evil as Vader is. And that resonated with me too. That's something that I have felt for the entirety of my life up until even the present moment. Up until the present point, I have this internal struggle of staying on the good path. And I'm not going to get religious with you here, but that really affected me as well. And I'm skipping ahead on this because at the end of it, he would rather die than accept a position of power that would have aligned himself with evil. As we know, he gets, Yoda says you don't face him. Obi-Wan says if you face Vader, I can't help you. You're going to be doing this on your own. You're not ready. And then when they realize he's going to go, he say, hey, look, don't forget what you've learned. It can save you. You never know. You know what I mean? It's one of those... I do a lot of training in the martial arts, and sometimes people say, well, can this guy beat this guy or whatever? And you're looking at it and you're going, no, you never know. Probably not, but you never know. And, the characters in the show were doing that exact thing. I really liked Yoda. I didn't mind that he was a little green puppet. It didn't bug me as much as the Jawas bug me even today. And it certainly didn't bother me as much as the Ewoks bother me. Horrible, horrible Ewoks bother me. Okay, so he has this struggle, and then you get the big reveal, right? Well, obviously they torture his friends. They capture Princess Leia and Han Solo, and they torture him so that the energy of the Force goes out, and that he realizes that he has to go rescue his friends instead of letting them die, and so he quits his training. And that is actually one place I would have liked to have seen more of. I would have liked to have seen more of his training. Because as in being in martial arts, I'm like, well, what did they do? Like, what was their training with the lightsaber? What happened? What? And then later they wrote in about how Yoda didn't have a lightsaber, but you didn't see a lightsaber with Yoda there. So I'm like, well, how did they train? I could only imagine that they trained with a lightsaber. And of course, one of the reasons why you never see a lot of that is because it was a puppet, and it was hard to make him do anything other than instruct, right on his back, that kind of thing. But I really wish they would have seen more of that. But at the end, I really like the idea that, and I thought the lightsaber fight between between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader was amazing. Thought it was really good. And you could really tell that at the beginning of this, that Darth Vader is the far superior fighter, and he is just toying with him. And that he could take advantage of him. He could win at any time, eventually cutting off his hand to prove the point. And then there it is. Luke Skywalker is forced with the dilemma to fall down this shaft to who knows what, this trash hole to who knows what, or to take this position of power, but to accept the position of the dark side. And he chooses the light over the dark. He chooses to even, the door, which you don't know what's behind that door. Obviously, he gets saved, and then they go off. He gets his hand reattached, and then that's the end. But the biggest part of this was obviously the Luke Skywalker's archetype coming to some pretty crazy conclusions. That's his father, and that he wasn't prepared, and he needed that lesson. He really, really needed that lesson, that he wasn't prepared to face on the challenges. And isn't that how it is? You kind of think, you get out of your idealism, and you see enough of the world, and you think, oh man, I've got it now, and well, and then you can decide whether or not you're gonna step through that door that you don't know, but you know that door is good. That door is the good side. Or you're going to step through a door, or you're going to step into the safety, but you know that what the choices you're making is an evil choice. So that really resonated with me, as I've already said. A+. That movie is an A+. And then we get to the worst of the series. In my absolute generosity, I give it a A-. But I would really give it probably a B+. So what did I like about it, and what didn't I like about it the most? Okay, so the movie opens up with them rescuing Han Solo, which I thought was really cool, and I thought the green lightsaber was cool. And everybody knows the story behind the green lightsaber. They were going to just do another blue lightsaber, but because of the sky was blue on Tatooine, it didn't show up as well, so they decided to do green lightsaber instead. And I thought that was really cool. And by the way, I was around 7 when Empire came out, and I was around 9. So the things that kind of bother me now aren't things that bothered me then. Okay, they weren't as big of a deal for me at 9. But I love that original scene. I love the rescue of Han Solo. Very necessary. Luke's obviously, there's really no way to tell how many years there was in between. There's probably some fan site somewhere that knows that. I don't know that. But Luke's obviously more mature and more strong in the Force. And you can see his Force powers coming out right away to rescue his friend, kill the gangster. We get to see Leia in the bikini, which was the fuel for many a nights for many a young man, I'm sure. And we get to see her strangle, and we finally get to meet, the infamous Jabba the Hutt, which I think they did a good job on. The original the Star Wars A New Hope had a scene with Jabba the Hutt in it. They took it out, which I'm glad. And in the new ones, they put it back in, which I didn't mind them putting it back in, but because of the way they eventually settled on it, it didn't really turn out well. It didn't turn out well at all. So I thought that was all really good. The only thing about that scene I didn't like as much was the Celestius Crumb. Obviously, he looks like a little Muppet. Doesn't look real at all. He's just like a little Muppet kind of figure. We see the evilness of Jabba the Hutt, with that girl who's basically doesn't want to get molested by Jabba the Hutt, so he drops her into the Rancor pit, and she gets eaten by the Rancor, and then another defeat of evil with good. That was good. The part that's bad is, it's like, come on, man, like the rebels found a problem with the first Death Star, and now what you're going to do is build another Death Star, right? Okay, you're going to build another Death Star? Come on. You built the Death Star. It didn't work out for you. Let's go to something else. And it was almost like, well, we can't think of anything else. So we got to have a Death Star that we blow up. I really hope the rebels don't find anything wrong with this Death Star like they did the last Death Star. So I didn't like that. Didn't care for that at all. I thought that was a little bit cheesy. I liked that he visited Yoda, but that he got no further training from him. I didn't care for that. And I thought it was a little inconsistent between the episode, this Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, where in Empire Strikes Back, basically Yoda's saying, you're not going to become a Jedi unless you or in Empire Strikes Back, he's saying, no, you can't face Vader. You can't face Vader. Don't face him. You're not a Jedi. And then in this one, he's like, well, you're not going to be a Jedi until you face Vader. It's like, okay, all right, okay. I guess that's how people become Jedis, is they fight Vader. Is that the only way you can become a Jedi? Really? And isn't that a little inconsistent with the last one? So I didn't care for that. As you can see, I'm having more critiques than I am having favorable comments about this one. But oh well, face Vader. I don't know why that would make him a Jedi by facing Vader. But I'm sure there's some fan fiction apologist out there who can tell me. I just didn't like it. I thought he should have, it just one thing didn't have anything to do with the other. And then it was inconsistent from the last film. But people will say, well, he grew, and that's what... I could imagine what some Star Wars enthusiast apologist would say about that right there. All right, nitpicking. They go to the planet, or the moon of Endor, and I thought that was really cool. The moon of Endor, a little bit different than you've got, the one planet that's all sand, and now we've got this other planet that's all foresty. Really cool. Except for we are introduced to the Ewoks, which are the most idiotic characters that you could possibly ever think to have, in my opinion. In my humble right opinion. That is the most idiotic bunch that they would have stood up at. First of all, as we know, Lucas was going to do Wookiees. But Wookiees were technologically advanced, and these people were supposed to be not technologically advanced. And so he made them small and called them Ewoks. And made them little teddy bears. And little teddy bears are going to take down, trained soldiers. They could do some damage. Maybe some things go in their favor. But first of all, there are people on other planets. Some technologically advanced, some not as technologically advanced. Why couldn't you find Wookiees on other planets? I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility to find Wookiees on other planets. Well, we get the reveal that Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia are brother and sister. Which is fine. I know some people hated that. That's not a point I hated. I thought that was a good resolve to... I thought that was a good resolve between the two, the conflict between the two. And then Luke Skywalker faces Vader, and he faces him with an amount of sympathy that he tries to win him over to the light side. Taken in front of the Emperor. We're finally introduced to the Emperor. And I thought that I still don't understand, even to this day, even with the prequels, the loyalty that Anakin Skywalker has towards the Emperor. But we see the turning of Anakin Skywalker. And you can actually see that archetype going, because in the first one, we're introduced to this bad character. In the second one, we're introduced to this guy who kills off his own people because they're not getting the job done. To the third one, where he doesn't kill anybody. He doesn't. I don't know if you registered that at all. He doesn't force choke anybody to death or anything like that. So we can see an archetype in his character as well, where he becomes a good guy, where he actually, he finds redemption. And he finds redemption through his son by finally killing this person who he built all this loyalty up to save his son. He just couldn't see that happening. I thought the Force Lightning was cool. I did not understand, and to me to this day, I did not understand how Luke not killing him, throwing down his lightsaber, is at all a good thing or siding with the good thing. I think Luke fighting the Emperor and killing him isn't out of line with anything noble. Okay, evil has to be destroyed. So I don't know why that would have been a big deal at all. I don't know why that would have been a big deal. So I didn't quite understand that. And his Force Lightning, obviously, I thought was really cool. And I thought in the next ones, in the prequels, I thought, well, geez, all you got to do is hold up your lightsaber, and it all comes to the lightsaber. So what's the point in even having that? That just seems, unless the person's totally unarmed, all Luke would have to do is, even if he didn't want to fight, he could just be defensive and do the lightsaber up in front of the Force Lightning. But a good happy ending. Anakin gets redeemed, and Luke Skywalker comes into his own, and you have the story tied up between Princess Leia and Han Solo, and a big B- for the Ewoks, and some of the inconsistencies in the story that I have already mentioned. So there's at least one show on Star Wars, one show on all that stuff. So anyway, that's really all I have to say about the subject. I really want to thank you for tuning in, listening to this podcast. If you have any ideas for a future show, please let me know about them. You can contact me at serialfordinner12@gmail.com. I think that's it. And it's the letter 4, so it's serial. Even though it's spelled Serial for Dinner, spelled out here, it's actually on my Gmail account. It's serial, the number 4 and dinner, 12@gmail.com. Please subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Share it, no matter where you're watching it. And give it a thumbs up, and please give it an honest rating if you liked what I had to say. And by the way, the next time I talk, I'm going to be having a guest. It's not just going to be this monologue. I will be having guests on the show from time to time. But even if I don't have a guest, I'm still going to talk about what I love to talk about, which is Generation X, which is Generation X culture, TV shows, movies, music, all the good stuff, all right? We will talk with you again soon. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, all that stuff. Really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Take care, and we'll see you again on the next episode.